Today, we are talking about classroom management, especially if you are a first year teacher or if you are in an inner city classroom, because we are days away from winter break and I'm tired. So welcome back, everybody. My name is Nina Rodriguez, and this is my channel, Misfit to Teach, where I talk about all things teaching and how to stay physically, mentally, and emotionally fit to teach. So if I haven't met you already, please consider hitting that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you can be notified of my videos and we can come together every week. One of the strategies that I use now that really didn't occur to me very well in my younger self when I started out as a teacher, that I wish I understood. I actually understood it very well when I saw this documentary on Netflix. And it's, if you haven't already seen it, it's basically where these teenage girls who are incarcerated in a juvenile detention center, it follows their life and their story pretty much until it's time for them to leave. And one of the things that stuck out to me about it was the superintendent, the warden. And this guy is like one of the most calm people that I've seen in that kind of situation, where you would think it's high energy, chaos can ensue at any given moment. And every time they bring on the warden, he's monotone almost to the point of being obnoxious, but his calm and his chill are so on point that it's like nothing these girls do, it's not that it doesn't faze him and it's not important to him, but nothing they do shakes him from his anchors. He's always super calm, even in the midst of total chaos. And I wish I understood the value of that long before I got into teaching, because the teacher who shares their calm and their peace in the classroom is the teacher that is going to transform that classroom into a place of calm and peace. Now, that does not mean that you won't have high energy, super expressive students who are coming into your classroom and totally throwing off the vibe. It does mean, however, that you as the educator set the temperature in that room. You set the tone and the mood ultimately. So you cannot allow the behaviors of your class and the mood of your students to then determine how the rest of that class period is going to go. If your classroom is unfolding into disruptive behavior, it's very important to respond to that from this uncompromising place of calm. You go back to your center. Even if that means taking a few deep breaths, you get very, very centered and you respond slowly and strategically. But you never ever allow your calm and your peace to be disrupted. And you don't want to allow yourself to escalate, even if the kids are escalating. It is no secret in teaching right now that we are faced with a lot of problems. We seem to be collectively in this issue where we can't, or where a lot of teachers are having problems with managing classroom behavior. And I think it's helpful to know, first and foremost, that there is no magic bullet. That means that whatever classroom management strategy you are implementing, you cannot expect overnight change. The environment and the culture of your classroom is organic. That means that it changes and it grows and it evolves over time, that different factors and variables are going to come in and out of it. So if things are going to change day to day, how can we as educators establish an expectation for our classroom? The first thing we need to do is to establish your rules and procedures. The notable author Harry Wong, who wrote the book the first days of school, said this: "The number one problem in the classroom is not discipline. It is the lack of procedures and routines." So I will ask you, what are your routines and procedures for how you are conducting your classroom? What can they expect when they come into the room, and what's going on in terms of step-by-step processes that is dictating the flow of your classroom energy? If routines and procedures are central to eliminating chaos from our classrooms, how do we start implementing routines and procedures? We do this at the very beginning of the class period, really the very beginning of the school year. But if you haven't established routines and procedures yet in this part of the school year, I encourage you to go ahead and just get it started now. And how we do that is by instructing our students step by step what the expectation and the process is for the ebb and flow in our classroom. So for example, at the very beginning of each of my class periods, I hold out the phone bucket. It's this very big cauldron looking sucker, and I have the kids put their phones into this phone bucket. So yes, I am actually a proud card-carrying member of Team Phone Confiscation. I know that that's a touchy subject and it's not for everybody, but let me explain why that works for me. I believe first and foremost in taking the kids' phones because I am seeing a severe uptick in phone addiction, particularly with regard to social media. If we're not finding a way to manage phone use in the school, particularly in your classroom, we can expect a phone free for all that will very quickly melt into chaos. No. When you take their phones at the beginning of the class period, that puts the accountability and the focus right where it always should have been and never should have left, back on the student. So this is a very difficult thing to implement with students if you aren't going to be confident and consistent with it. If you're going to have a phone policy, you want to be confident and you want to be consistent. So I actually coach them through this step by step at the very beginning of the year, because as you can imagine, telling a room full of 13-year-olds that you're about to take their phone every day is cause for huge concern and bending and buckling and backlash. But I totally make this something that they should do and that they should expect to do, but even that they want to do. And that conversation is basically me telling them, I'm going to stand at the doorway of the classroom every day, and I want them to put their phone into the bucket as they walk in the room. When they do that and we get through our lesson, they can bet that not only will they get their phone back, but there might even be some downtime at the end of the class period where they can be on their phone for a little bit, or at least have some time to check their messages. I like this method of managing the phones because it eliminates a very severe problem out of the classroom right out of the gate. Also, doing something like this helps to establish a trust relationship with your students. When you are taking what is their most prized possession at this age, and then they can trust that they will be getting it back from you, they feel safe with you, ironically. They feel like your classroom is a place where the teacher does what she says and says what she does. That is a very important element that's going to feed into the rest of your school year. Now, contrary to that, if a student does not give me their phone and I happen to see them with it later in the class period, then not only do I take it at that moment, but I also keep it for the rest of the day. There may be some initial backlash on that, but when the student, and it doesn't normally take very many times, just one student, as the example for the classroom, but when they have that phone taken and can't get it back for the rest of the day, you would be surprised by how quickly that lesson sinks in and how much more cooperative they become the next time around. I keep my rules very short, concise, and easy to understand and implement. So in my classroom, I have three main rules. I had to boil it down from the things that I felt were really important, the things that I thought were common sense, and the things that we absolutely could not do without. And I filtered them down into the three things that we absolutely could not do without. I figured that at least with these three rules as our baseline, everything else we could figure out as we move along. So I would ask the educator in your classroom, what are your rules right now? And can you boil them down to just 5? If you can boil them down to 5, can you then narrow that even more to 3? When you have 3 to 5 simple, easy to implement rules in your classroom, that makes it so that the environment is easier for your kids to abide in.